Chapter 15. The notification hammered the inside of my skull like a nail. Someone was too eager to drive. External authority query / priority, critical. Handshake request, node, 7B, symbiote, coral, permission, Y/N. It picked a bad hour to be polite. The corridor in front of us was a kiln. Stone spat chips. Men shouted names that would be said later in quieter rooms. I did not have my hands free for anything but killing and holding, and neither of those had room in them for a question. The prompt chimed again, insistent, and I bared my teeth at nothing. "Yes," I said, and I did not whisper. "Yes. Take whatever you want." The chorus took the word like a rope thrown into a pit and pulled. Negotiation open. Protocol mismatch / rollback. Attempt, 1/ denied. "I don't care," I said to the air, and the air rang back with the hum of flying lead. We had chosen our spot on the ashen path, and it had chosen us back. The funnel we'd built turned men and women into smoke and pink mist. The off-worlders pressed the crown, blue glass masks, eyes cold as money, and from the sump their brothers came with the patience of water. We were the hinge they aimed to break, and the hinge screamed. Casa lay to my right behind sacks that had been food. The sack in front of her spurted white pulp when a round hit it and then splattered with red when the next did not hit the sack. She kept shooting until the rifle clicked empty, and then she reached for the pipe, leaned on the floor, and a line of rounds cut her open from collarbone to hip. She arched, moving as if answering a final question, and then slumped into the soft wall she had made. "Casa," I said. But my voice was lost to the storm. Attempt, 2/ denied. Protocol retry / legacy tables, fail. Attempt, 3/ denied. "Hold," Duragan said, voice flat. He had tied his bad arm tight to his ribs, and he braced his good shoulder against the wall marked with the iron slash. Our men fired in rhythm that belonged to the old songs of Chandurax. I sang Apogee Lament under my breath until the afterwind woke and made a low circle at our knees like a companion animal trained to heel. Verse, Apogee Lament, cast afterwind, minor DR, plus composure, heel on movement knells, 5/10 down the corridor the off-worlders buzzed. Then new shapes came behind them, bare-chested men with eyes like late winter and blades held like promises. No armor. No hesitation. Their skins were printed with the iron slash, not painted but raised in the flesh. They didn't advance, they were loosed. They flickered between the off-world rifles and came on at a loping run with their mouths shut. "Oh fuck," Duragan said, seeing what I saw. "They're a different breed. Adjudicators." Though I did not know the name then, the chorus shivered across my teeth as if the room itself had licked a battery. Attempt, 11/ denied. Fallback to Symbiote Archive v.0.6, incompatible. Attempt, 12/ denied. The first bare-chested monster hit our wall like a thrown grenade. He took the top of the sacro and slid through the fungus as if it were water. I caught him with the pipe as he came out the other side. The pipe met his temple and rang. He smiled without his mouth moving. He did not fall. I felt his breath on my cheek, and the breath was wrong, like air pulled through leaves. I put Cinderfall note straight down his throat. He'd found the wet there and made it into pain the way a smith makes slag into iron. He gagged, and I saw genuine surprise alight in the crow beast's eyes. He reached for me and I took a step sideways, let him fall into Lyra's woman with the pan from the markets, and she brought the pan down on the back of his head 3 times until the pan bent and his skull remembered it was made to break. Next, Lyra said, "Lo." There was blood on her teeth. Attempt, 19/ denied. Legacy handshake, adjudicator, rejected. Attempt, 20/ denied. The wall with the iron slash was just stone. It had been stone every time I'd looked at it. Again, Duragan grunted. We put our remaining ammo into the crow beasts. The adjudicators came on. Our dozen became 9, then 12 when 2 crawled forward from behind the broken tables to die with us. The remaining rebels, maybe numbered 50, scattered across our broken line. The guns spoke. Some of our men stood with the guns and some went out to meet the blade work with nothing but chair legs and rebar. If you have never watched a man choose to run into knives because standing still means a different end, you have never seen faith. Attempt, 31/ denied. Rollback to Symbiote v.0.3b, coral, partial. Error, network missing. Attempt, 32/ denied. Attempt, 33/ denied. Attempt, 34/ denied. Attempt, 35/ Provisional access one-time token generated. Warning, revoked, access denied in 30 seconds, attempt, 36/denied. The wall exhaled. No sound at all, then a whisper as if a glove had been peeled from a hand. The seam drew breath. A slit of dark widened into a black mouth. Cool air crawled across our faces. It smelled faintly of a chemical that reminded me of damp tunnels from 7 years ago. "We go," I said. "Go," Dragon echoed. He caught my sleeve and hauled me toward the opening. The corridor behind us filled with the waist-high shuffle of men who have learned they are about to die and mean to spend it instead of lose it. Casa was meat on the sacks. Lyra pulled the pan woman behind the next rank and set her down with her head on her lap and did not cry because there was no breath for it. An adjudicator vaulted the sacks and landed in front of me like a cat hitting a hearth. His blade went for my ribs and he reminded me of a medieval knight more than a veteran of trench warfare on a nuclear hellscape. The afterwind tugged at my ankles, gaining me the smallest distance to the left, and the blade kissed the place where my heart had been only seconds ago. I put the rim of the pipe into his sternum and heard the crack come up the handle. He went down to one knee, but his reaction was just shocked pain. The second knife came low, a shovel pry for my belly. Dragon's chain wrapped his wrist. Bones popped. The knife clanged. I did not thank anyone. I didn't have time. "Sell," Lyra shouted. "Move." We poured through the opening, what was left of us. 9. 15. 11. Numbers failed and only faces mattered. The door pulsed as access to it. A blade scraped stone inches from my ear. Dragon shoved me with both hands and his bad arm tore something that would not be mended. I stumbled across the threshold and followed. The tunnel ran upward. The grade was gentle enough to fool tired legs. The air tasted different. Higher. Dry. A trace of metal lay on the tongue, the little pain that lives in blood when it is close to the sun. My skin prickled. Radiation bit like sand blown on a cold wind. Skyburn lives even where the sun cannot see. We had pushed down the dark hallway only to be met with the same door wall marked with ions/. The construction here was new, though it didn't matter at the time. The whole corridor was built post-Skyburn. External authority query / priority, critical. Handshake request, node. Permission, y/n. I was still bleeding. I was still breathing. I was still angry. "Yes," I said, and if there was a god anywhere it could have heard the word. Attempt, 35/. Provisional access one-time token generated. Roll back to symbiote v.0.3b, coral, partial. Warning, revoked, access denied in 30 seconds. I stumbled across the threshold and turned, and Dragon did not follow. Dragon. He smiled in that farmer way that says the frost will come when it pleases and your opinion has nothing to do with it. "You run, boy," he said softly. He made the word into a blessing. "You carry them." The adjudicators hit the line like a wave. Dragon stepped into them with the chain clamped around both fists and a prayer in his teeth. I knew every soundless word. The seam sealed in my face. Stone thudded. The sound beyond went wet and then dull and then small. I put my hand on the door and felt the last of my men spend themselves against it like rain that means it will not stop until morning. I put my forehead there and breathed iron. The chorus lifted a name in my throat and I swallowed it like a man swallowing a coal to keep the heat. "Move," I said to myself because there was no one left to order. "Move." I ran in the dark until the dark broke itself into shapes. Bulkheads. Fins. A line of hulks tucked into the rock like beasts sleeping nose to tail. The first had no power. The second's belly glowed with the dim breath of machines that despised interruption. The third woke when I came near. External authority query / priority, critical. Handshake request, vehicle, reg, y/sun/priv32 glass moth, symbiote, coral, permission, y/n. I was still bleeding. I was still breathing. I was still angry. "Yes," I said, and if there was a god anywhere it could have heard the word. Negotiation open. Protocol mismatch / rollback. Attempt, 1/, denied. Attempt, 2/, denied. Attempt, 3/, denied. Behind me something boomed. Not a gun. A body hitting a door hard enough to make old bolts remember their creation. I turned. The seam shivered. It did not open. A new sound came onto the old, a scrape more deliberate. Then the door opened and a man stepped out of the tunnel. He had no shirt. His chest had the iron/tattoo, raised and glossy like fresh scar. His mouth was calm. His eyes were not. He held nothing in his hands but was covered in blood. We looked at one another across 20 paces of stone. I felt like I could feel his breath in my teeth. He smiled. He did not speak. He started toward me at a steady pace. Attempt, 17 / denied. Attempt, 18 / denied. Attempt, 19 / denied. The ship's belly lights flexed, then brightened. A seam on its side cracked into a grin and a ramp spilled from the grin like a tongue. The rail lights waited with the patience of expensive things. I should have turned. I had trained myself for 7 years to die in rooms like the rooms I had fled. I had asked for it as if asking makes any difference. I had shaped songs around it. I had stitched names into my ribs to make a shroud of the dead. When the hour came I did not choose. My body chose. Or the chorus refused me the right to keep my word to death. Or I had spent so long standing in blood that my feet had learned to keep moving when thinking would drown them. The truth is all of those and none. I was a scared man in his 14th year walking through neck-deep water. The world came in like sound through a wall. I was a spectator to my own actions. Attempt, 20 / denied. Attempt, 21 / provisional access. Warning, Onarchy present? No. Attempt, 22 / denied. The adjudicator did not speed. He did not slow. I could count the breaths to his hands on my throat. I stepped onto the ramp. Inside, the air changed. It tasted filtered. It tasted like money. The noise of the hive dimmed as if a lid had been set on a pot. The floor underfoot gave a little, a polite bend to meet the bones in your foot so your joints would not complain later. The lights were warm, not the harsh blue-white that had been allowed to the chattel stock. Instead they were the color of lamps in rooms with rugs. Attempt, 28 / denied. Attempt, 29 / denied. Attempt, 30 / provisional access. Warn, flight authority locked. Request, autopilot, Y/N take it, I said. Take everything. Autopilot, request received. Permission, Y/N yes. The word was a knife. I gave it away. Autopilot, enabled. Attempt, 31 / denied. Attempt, 32 / denied. Attempt, 33 / provisional access, 17%, warning, owner biometric missing. Spoof, Coral interface, partial. Attempt, 34 / denied. The ramp began to rise. The adjudicator stood a step away from it with his hands at his sides and looked at me as if I had done the funniest thing and he did not know why. The ramp kissed his shins. He hopped backward. The lip sealed with a breath. And I lost sight of him. Attempt, 45 / denied. Attempt, 46 / denied. Attempt, 47 / provisional access. Bypass, Onarchy emulation, coral threading. Error, throttle interlock. The deck moved under me, a smooth roll like the first surge of a tide. Somewhere behind a wall a throat cleared itself and old luxury came to life. Doors unlatched. Climate hissed. A threadbare woolen coat hung on a peg by the entrance, the kind that costs enough to feed an entire apartment floor. The wood panels on the walls were not wood, but they thought hard about being wood and that it was nearly indistinguishable. The carpet was a pale thing you do not lay under men in boots. It remembered bare feet. It remembered laughter. A bar curved under a window, its bottles strapped in with belts. Most were empty. One still held a thumb of amber that had been created in an age unknown to my young mind. A bowl on the sideboard held fruit that had turned only a day ago. It made me sick. The chairbacks were tight-laced with a fabric that did not fray. Someone had carved a small constellation into the arm of the pilot couch with a skill in etching unparalleled by anything it ever seen. The constellation meant nothing to me. Attempt, 58 / denied. Attempt, 59 / denied. Attempt, 61/100ths, provisional access. Warn, external authority pinging, source unknown, Coral OS mismatch. Attempt, 61/100ths, denied. The cockpit was a room and not a cage. The canopy glass arced overhead like a frozen wave. Panels slept and woke as I looked at them. The controls were not levers, they were suggestions, smooth arcs where hands rested to inform machines without the indignity of effort. A couch ran the width of the cabin behind the pilot's chair for the sort of party where men talk about rules they will make others follow. I set my hands on the arms of the chair and felt them sink into the padding the way bread gives under a thumb. "Take us up," I said, and realized I had already said yes to that. Attempt, 73/ provisional access. Autopilot, trajectory solution, local gravewell. Clearance, none. Ignore? Y/N yes. Warning acknowledged. Something under the floor found its breath. The whole ship drew it in and held it and then let it out. The tunnel walls drifted backward. The nose tipped. I saw the adjudicator through the canopy for an instant, a small man made smaller by glass, and then the glass showed me rock and then a black throat that became a mouthful of cold air. The ship kissed the tunnel lips. The chorus rang in my ear, an excited choir that had been allowed into a temple barred for 2,000 years. The belly lights dimmed. Outside, ash blew. A lamp on a stanchion flared and failed. We slotted into a shaft that rose and rose. Attempt, 84/ denied. Attempt, 85/ provisional access. Bypass, throttle interlock cleared. Attempt, 86/ denied. "Come on," I said, and I did not know whether I was speaking to the ship or the thing that had finally woken up inside me. Stone fell away like a bad dream. We slid past a lattice of girders that had once held a lift that had once carried men who had once believed in a world. The sticks of Chandurax opened. It climbed in a spiral through strata that remembered oceans and fires and the day the sky came to die. The walls sweated frost and then bled it off in mist. The ceiling became thin. A plate moved. The sun leered down, a white coin smeared in a bruise. Skyburn waited where the sky should be. The air still wore the color it had been given by men who lived elsewhere without thinking one iota about those who had been here in the first place. The ship drank that light. It rose to meet it like a dog seeing an old friend. Attempt, 97/100ths, provisional access. Onarchy emulation, complete. Handshake, accepted. Node, 7B//vehicle, glass moth, symbiote, coral, access, granted, user, provisional. The world widened. The yacht shook itself free of the shaft and slid out under a sky that had lost the right to call itself day. Below, the consortium was a wound that had learned to close around a scab. Around it the land lay like a beast flayed for study. Black rivers of glass, fields of blistered stone, the sagging ribs of towers. Dust devils danced with a lunatic glee. Far off, a chain of hills wore the white lace of fallout like a bridal veil that no priest would lift. Inside, the air held steady at a temperature that thought about spring. The vents breathed after me, keeping the air remarkably clean. A sound like music without notes lived in the walls, the quiet purr of things tuned to each other. The bar lights woke and warmed to amber. The seat belts nodded out of their cradles like hands offering themselves. I did not take them. If you are asking why I did not go back, why I did not open the ramp and run down the throat of the tunnel and die on the right floor with the right names in my mouth, I will tell you the truth that is the only one that belongs to me. I do not know. Maybe the chorus would not let me. It had spent too long counting me to let me be subtracted by my own will. Maybe the years of dying had finally taught my bones the habit of moving forward and my bones obeyed themselves. Maybe a child that had spent half his life in pits was scared to die. I remember the weight of the pipe in my hands. I remember the faces of my dead as clearly as I remember the taste of the ship's air. But I do not remember choosing. The ship climbed. The ship knew how. The controls shivered under my palms as if something inside them laughed to find a human there. The autopilot walked through a set of little rituals I did not understand, and each time it asked me to bless a thing I could not even name, I did. Flight envelope, translow atmos mid-atmos. Radiation shielding, active. Inertial field, calibrated / crew count, 1. Warning, local traffic. Warning, planetary network, none. Course, up. The hull keened once when the first hard wind shouldered it. The windows lacquered themselves with a film that cut the brightness and let the world into me in measured doses. Below, the wound hive shrank. The ring of shanties around it became a bruise of darker ash. The roads were threads leading to other wounds. We rose through a layer of cloud that had learned to be poison and then through a layer of where the atmosphere should have been. Names, I said, because I had to put a word into the new space or it would have swallowed me whole. The chorus answered with a whisper that was not a whisper, 100 voices saying one vowel, a sound like a door opened carefully. It did not spill the names yet. It wanted to. I wanted it. I put my hand on the bar to hold myself here. In the cabin a screen unfolded from the ceiling with the laziness of wealth, showing nothing until I looked at it. Then it showed the ship as the ship wished to see itself, a slender needle with short wings like the fins of a fish that lives near light. Someone had painted a moth on its side in a hand that had learned letters in a school. Glass moth, the panel said, and I believed it. The couch behind me had a blanket folded over one arm. I put my hand to it and the cloth shocked me, soft, thick, clean. I remembered the feel of fungus sacks under elbows. I remembered ash in the mouth. I remembered caked blood. I drew my hand back. The ship's pantry whispered open. Packages sat labeled in neat black type that did not blur with age. I broke one. It held a square of something that was like preserved bread. I ate it without tasting. The water tap gave water that tasted of nothing at all. I drank until my stomach hurt. The ship climbed. It set the horizon on a gentle curve and then a sharper one. The line where ash meets sky became a rim of metal. The clouds thinned to a fraying veil. The blue turned black. Stars shone, weak at first, then arrogant. The moth's engines changed voice and the whole hull relaxed as if the work it was made for had finally begun. The planet dropped away. Chandurax lay beneath like a burned coin hammered flat. The scars the sky burned had written on it gleamed faintly. There were other lights, needle pricks, moving, things that had learned to live here anyway. Some belonged to the off-worlders, I could only assume, and some were probably just fires man had made to pretend the sun still visited. I watched until my eyes refused to make sense of it. Then warning sirens blared all around me. Chapter 16. The klaxons were a dire echoing cry. They reached me down in the bones and rattled things I had thought were long quiet. Red marks rippled across the canopy and stacked in a corner where the ship's mind wanted my eyes. I knew what they meant because a lifelong past as a boy who had once lain on a rug in another world with a screen in his hands, watching ships shoot at other ships. Missile locks. Range shrinking. A pattern of little teeth closing on us. The glass moth spoke in a language that did not waste words. Threat grid, 4 vectors / solution, none. Advisory, evasion impossible / intercept less than 0 hours and 32 seconds. I could have told it yes and no and any prayer I had, and none of it would have mattered. The craft had been rich once. Something inside it that did not care for my dignity opened a mouth in the floor and lifted a ring around me like a collar. Descending the ramp behind me hissed shut, clean as a lid closing on a jar. Somewhere in the hull the ship groaned with the strain of wanting to live. The klaxons kept their count. The escape pod was a silver seed with a single seat and a screen that could be all the walls if it wished. It grew like a fluid hardening around me. Harnesses reached for my shoulders with the patience of spiders. The floor vibrated as if remembering dirt. The hatch grew shut from all sides at once. The chorus fussed with the pod's voice like birds on a branch and then stepped back to let the bigger bird sing. Emergency sequence, armed. Trajectory, last log destination, confirm? The screen showed an echo of a map that was not made of any stars I knew. Star after star tagged with a number. At the bottom. Transit duration, REL, 178 solar years, Bureaucratica standard. I did not think. Thought had not saved a man in 7 years on Chandurax. I put my palm to the pad. Yes. Consent accepted / cryo echelon, hard. Osmotic flood, standby. The seat's ribs tightened and then I was in fluid. It was not water. It was a gel like melted glass, cold and clean and without mercy. It came in through the mouth and nose together so there was nowhere to push the breath. Reflex carried me through the first panic and then reflex ran out and something else held me. I felt the pump of my chest take the blood from my hands and send it where it mattered. My heart became a metronome. The pod counted me down into nothing. As I went out the chorus made a last note. It was not a word. It was a hell tone, a promise to stand watch. The ship turned its head toward what hunted it and the pod let go. I woke to a hammer in my chest and a knife in my throat. The gel wanted out and it took the most direct door. I rolled onto my side without knowing there was a side to roll to and vomited myself empty onto a bed of green. The green was soft and elastic like 1,000 tongues. Air hit my lungs with a paw. It had weight to it, sweetness without rot, water in it that had not been stolen from the air itself. I coughed until there was blood. I lay there and let the sky press on my back. There were sounds. Not gears. Not engines. This was the conversation of small lives. Things chirped without malice. Leaves rubbed their hands together. A creature with a throat like a flute called to another that did not care. The light came through the canopy and coins and knives. My skin broke out in 100 little gooseflesh hills because it had forgotten this sort of pleasant touch. I rolled again. slower. The pod crouched at the lip of a shallow pit like a beetle about to drink. Its skin had blistered where the descent had gone too fast. One panel hung crooked, an eyelid that could not close. The ground around it was stitched with crushed fern, the trail of a rough landing. Beyond the pit the world went on in shades of green I did not have words for. The chorus returned as if it had only stepped outside for a drink of air. It came in through the bones, polite, and then filled the room. Symbiote, active//network, scanning. The words crossed my mind the way a breeze crosses grass, making every blade dip in the same direction. I felt it under the skin first, that low sifting as if fine sand ran along the marrow. Then in the teeth, a tuning fork struck somewhere far down. The ground answered. Not with sound but with a knowledge, roots, filaments, a white handwriting through loam and stone, old as rot and busy as ants. The chorus leaned into it like a lover's embrace. Network, discovered. Class, public, node status, healthy. Authority, permissive, economic, handshake, requested. I stood by the pod with moss wet up to my calves and gave the yes because there was no sense in playing coy now. The yes went down the mycelial ladders. It found a response. Link, establish//node, Verneth Vale. Reconciling, personal ledger, offline, 7.2 years, warning, cross ERA offset, unknown. The jungle did not twitch. It had its own business. But in me the world shifted a little to make room for a city I could not see. Numbers stacked like birds on a wire and then took off together. The ledger I had dragged like a torn net through pits and tunnels and through the last mouth of Chandurax woke at once, all knots pulled tight by unseen hands. Quest resolution. Survive the show complete. Caravan destroyed complete. Titles recorded. Reward status, deferred payable. They came fast then, the way news comes fast when it has spent too long at the gate. Title, Witness of a Sky Burn / unique. Effect? Locked until node, Historium node data accessed. Title, First heir of our locked root / unique, root privilege. Title, Last child of Chandurax / epic. You are the last surviving native from a planet scorched almost 2 centuries ago. Vitality, 1+, grit, 1+, perception, 2+, title, discordant bard / class specific. Effect, verse DC on hostile listeners, friendly morale may be affected. More followed, minor as moths. Nothing of weight next to those 4. I read them and felt nothing at first. The words were neat as a ledger. They had no ash on them, no blood. Last child of Chandurax. The line bit more than the others. It put a measure on a thing that should have refused measure. If there had been any mercy left in a star they would not have had a title ready for a boy who had stayed young while the world moved on by 2 lifetimes. But they did. The network was not done humbling me with its kindness. Experience, reconciled. Slayer bonus, applied, targets above average tier, status, level up opportunities, pending orientation, reward pool, issued. Something in the dirt rang once and stopped. The earth there heaved in a spot the size of a dinner plate and split with a slow carefulness that was more animal than mineral. From it a hump grew. The hump became a box, first bone white, then taking color as if remembering itself. It rose until it stood just below my hip. It wore a dull cap like unpolished coin. Another stirred. Then a third. Damp soil sighed around them. The moss parted and draped their sides. In the span of a minute the clearing that had been only mine and the pods held a little family of growths that had not been there and now were and looked as if they had always belonged. Chest, bronze, X4, issued. Chest, silver, X3, issued. Chest, gold, X1, issued. Source, reputation / quest / survival / slayer, civic economy. I stared. The shapes were not metal though the names told me to think in that direction. They were grown. The bronze ones had skins like tough husks, the color of old varnish. A seam ran around each in a neat belt. Fine pores freckled their top like a mushroom's underside. The silver 3 were paler, laced with a web of fibers that caught the light where the canopy made coins on the floor. The gold was the strangest, not gold but a fair copy of it, as if some fungal alchemist had seen gilding once and could not bear to forget the trick. Its cap shed a powder that glimmered on my wrist hairs. What the actual fuck? I asked the nettled air. No one answered with a mouth. The chorus gave me its cool account. Economy note, rewards are borne by networked biota, return costs amortized across sites. Comment, mutualism, host, left right arrow emoji, network, reminder, claims expire, 90D, without opening. I moved nearer. The gold glinted in another little fall of bright light through the trees. And though it was not metal at all, the sight of it made the part of me that had counted shells and cartridges and shoulder bones flinch. Then to be given. I had not been given anything in 7 years that I did not bleed for. Even the water I had just drunk I had worked for with hands and a knife. Yet here were gifts that had climbed out of the soil just to place themselves within reach. "Open them," the old boy inside whispered, the one who had watched screens, loving loot and the thrill of a raid and not the one that died in pits. "No," the man answered with the mouth we share. "Not yet." Other notices blinked at the edges of thought like moths that want heat without the candle. I read them because reading keeps the hands from shaking. Root user benefit, stipend, civic, local scrip, Verneth Vale Bank, non-transferable, root user benefit, lodging rights, common, township, gray step. The economy reached for me with soft hands and found nothing to hold. It gave me a room in a town whose name I had never heard and put coin in a purse I did not wear. Another freight of titles slid in, quiet as a barge at night. Title, Prophet of the Slave, local, informal, migrated / Effect, while this title is equipped and you are within communities where your chant / rumor has spread, settlements, camps, pits, caravans that know the story, gain the following. Stat modifiers. Presence +1. Resolve +1. Perception +1. Attunement +1. Grit +1. Enslaved, indentured, and formerly enslaved start 1 attitude tier higher toward you, hostile wary open trusting. Betrayal resistance, enslaved allies resist coercion to betray you. Title, Crow Eater, local, informal, migrated // Effect, in territories patrolled or tax farmed by the crowmen, and any place your exploits are known, gain the following. Stat modifiers. Resolve +1. Presence +1. Perception +1. Grit +1. Attunement +1. Note, informal tags may affect civic prices / crowd response. Great, they are going to love those, I said to no one and really hoped a stranger wouldn't just see these. I laughed once at that. Prophet. Crow Eater. Yes. Name set on a boy by the mouths of men who had wanted to see him live. Chandurax, I said then, to see if the world would speak the word back. It did not. The jungle does not care. But the network cared. It had more to say on that head, and when it speaks of history it does so as if the event happened in a room next door and the paint has not yet dried. World Index, Chandurax, H-Class, Hellscape, Status, Unhabitable / Inaccessible, No Local Node, OBS, Subject Tagged Last Child, Verified, Offer, Memorial Enrollment, Y/N. I shut my eyes and the canopy came through my lids red. The memorial enrollment blinked and waited like a patient beggar. Not today, I said. The chorus, which had chided me like a stubborn animal all those years by itself, was changed at the edge. The network tied it to a chorus of other hungry gods that lived in dirt and wood and skin in 1,000 places. It did not lose its spark, it gained a harmony. Where once it had been a dog in a one-dog town, now and then it remembered a cathedral. It was not polite. It did not get sentimental. But it had more doors to try. Threnody Library, Sync, Partial, Versus, Validated, 2, Nelcap, +2, Network, After Wind Stability. I did not reach in to see what it had gathered, instead I now focused outward. I walked a slow half-circle around the chests instead. The bronze ones gave off a smell soft as old bread. The silver had no smell at all. The gold carried a memory of crushed marigold. I stood so the sun could take turns with each and mark them. I watched ants reconnoiter the new forms. They found nothing to carry. They moved on with the resignation of all small empires. I did not open it. I ran a finger along the seam and felt the fine give there. The skin shivered, like a plant remembering a rain. A frill of spores lifted and settled without offense. The seam did not split. It waited for the proper word, which is always permission in one form or another. The bronze were humblest. One had already swelled so the seam stood proud. I put both thumbs there and pressed without saying anything to any god. It parted with the wet sound of an orange. Inside lay 3 small shapes in a bed like pale moss, a twisted copper ring, a folded map scrap, and a sliver of mirror etched with a name. The other 3 bronze held a backpack, rope, torches, and a fire kit, classic adventuring gear. The silver nearest the light dappling from trees ticked. It was quiet, an insectoid-like sound with the regularity of a machine. I glanced toward it. Note, Silver chests respond to title alignment. Last child of Chandurax priority unlock, safety, open area recommended. Safety, I said. Look at me. I spread my arms in a ring of trees and a roof of leaves and the pot and a knife and a rope and the little white tooth of a tent. This is the safest place I have ever stood. The silver ticked again. Friendly advisory, local governor, Verneth Vale, issue civic curfew at dusk. Reason, predator migration, 5 to 7 solar days, suggestion, open rewards by day. Curfew. Governor. It was an old set of words, something unconsidered for a long time. The wastes and pits took no curfew. But the people here apparently did. The note had changed the chorus and it had decided to be my neighborly aunt and warned me the road got bad after sunset. A bird with a long tail like a swinging needle landed on the gold and tapped it once with its beak. The chest did not mind. The bird looked at me with one eye and then the other like a man and flew. Where it had perched there was a tiny print in the dust of the cap and the print shone. How long had it been since I had seen a creature living peacefully? Jason's memory sniffed around the edges of the rewards the way a dog sniffs around a man it thinks is hiding meat. We had once really loved looting. The bird's shadow flickered across the caps and was gone. I let the quiet settle in again, my breath in the hum of leaves, and put my palm to the silver chest. Confirm, open silver? Title set, last child / discordant bard, active, warning, contents may carry historic load. Yes, I said, though my mouth felt dry. The seam unwound like a fern. Inside, a length of metal ran the tray end to end, pitted, black-red from old air. They looked wrong together. Not a sword. Not a bar. A gutter length from a ruin, cut 2 arms span, its edge chewed, its mouth still flanged to catch rain. I knew it before I knew it. The arc of it, the heft. The pits had me read my pipe as other worlds ask boys to read books. I reached for it instinctually. Artifact, Chandurax gutter pipe. State, rusted, true//enchant, latent, unreadable, attune? Y/N the thing slept in my hands. Not heavy. Not light. Balanced the way a tool is when a man has used it so long its weight was second nature. I brought it up to my shoulder and ear and leaned, listening. A little tone came back from the pipe, not exactly sound, a vibration the way a railroad hums when a train is a county away. I tightened my grip and the tone deepened as if my fingers had pressed a hidden string. I did not say yes to the attunement. Not yet. I had no trust in any of this. Yet, I set this pipe down with more care than I meant to. In the next chest lay a knife. Not a pretty knife. A savage thing. Blade ground from some old saw, handle bound with wire too tight, edge stained brown the way old blood will paint a tool and never leave. The curve of it knew the seam between skin and meat. My hand flinched in anticipation and closed anyway. Toolie, ritual/utility, Skinner, pit make, note, user memory load detected. My throat worked. I set it down. Later. It would eat its share of what the jungle had to offer. I washed my palm on the moss despite nothing being on them. The third silver chest high open the thing inside took the little dappling of the light and did not give it back. Black as old oil. 3 rings of wire strung across it like catguts. A little wheel where fingers go, scabbed with use. A wheel fiddle. But Jason had known it by another name, a hurdy-gurdy. This one had been born in a room where breath stank of iron and mold. It wore that smell still. When I put my fingers to the crank the hairs on my arms rose, and through my teeth came the touch of a note so sad it refused the ear. Instrument, wheel fiddle, ashen dirge. Enchant, bound, effect, unknown, rec, discordant bard, harmonic risk. Advice, do not play in tight quarters without need. Welcome back, I said to Pipe as if it could speak like Duragan or any of the others. I had only left them minutes ago from my understanding. The chorus pinged in my head, the gold breathed under my hand before I touched it, as if a man on the other side had leaned in close to the crack and warmed it. Spores freckled the air, bright and brief. I pressed my thumbs to the seam. Confirm, open gold, 1-1? Yes, I said, and the cap of the gold chest rose with a sound like a wet cork. Rising from the fungus flesh of the chest itself a cradle of root held a vial no bigger than a little finger. The root had grown to fit it, braided and knotted like a midwife's hands. The vial itself was glass if glass can be grown. The gray liquid inside made its own light, not bright, no showman's trick, just a soft skin of dawn melted around a kernel of bright moonlight. I reached out, taking the vial and tilting it, and the light parted into 2 colors that did not like each other, a warm amber that promised bread in winter, and a thin blue like the edge of a knife. When I set it upright again the two strands blended without fail. Root boon, survivor's dilemma. Comment: root boons are gifts from the network's heartwood. We do not forget. Effect: root privilege required for full disclosure, binding cost, permanent, non-transferable. Note: carrying does not bind. Hint: choice changes future reward weights. Lore: a blood-bred boon grown in catacomb gardens. Its seal is etched with two mirrored masks, me and them. The right that opens the first step on the 18th-fold path of the survivor. I know a trap when I see one, I said jokingly, though the word trap had too much malice in it for what this was. It was a riddle in liquid. A wager. A god's little joke. It made my hands feel like someone else's. It made me want to smash it against a rock and rub the glow into the dirt just to prove I still could. The absurdity of it all made me sick. Where was this perfect abundance when I needed it on Chandurax? Why couldn't I find this to save young Drugo, or Dr. Druvago, Malthus, Duragan, Lyra, and countless other names now bound into me by the Bone Co? The chorus did not push. For once it was the quietest thing in me. It hummed in the bones low and even, reminding me of the change I was forced to undergo in that lab so long ago. I closed the gold. The cap left dust bright on my skin. I rubbed it on my slave smock of tanned leather and the glow lingered there a heartbeat and then seeped away like a swallowed word. The clearing had changed without moving. The gear lay where I had laid it. The map fragment waited there tantalizing to any MMO player like Jason was. My pipe, old habit, new metal, rested across my knees. The black wheel fiddle sat like a wound against a tree and I hid the skinner's edge in my schmuck, its face hidden in shame. I set my hands on my thighs and counted my lungs to 5 and back. Then I stood and cracked the ampule of gray liquid light, and like water it took to my palms then in small cool rivulets ran up my wrists into my elbows, something akin to magic. Evolving whiteness struck my mind in a storm. Choice I, keep, hoard the breath live at any cost. Effects, 10 minutes. Resolve +2, grit +2, damage reduction +20%, regen +25%. Fear/stagger immunity. Skyburn Threnodist, afterwinds gain severity by default, +15% enemy frailty. Versus crow-tagged foes, +15% damage. Consequences, 24 hours decision echo. Mercy locked, protective/aid options disabled unless explicitly life-saving. Allies in line of sight gain witness, -1 attitude tier, -2 persuasion pips versus them. Enslaved/formerly enslaved NPCs begin 1 tier colder, profit of the slave title benefits are suppressed in this region during echo. Choice 2, split, share the breath bind 1 life to yours. Target, choose 1 ally in 15 meters. Effects, 10 minutes. You an ally, resolve +1, grit +1, damage reduction +10%. Bonded link, 25% damage you take routes to the ally, and vice versa, 30% of healing on either mirrors to the other. Afterwinds become bonded gyres, center on both of you, +20% radius while within 20 meters. Rally/com checks for enslaved groups, DC -2. Consequences, 24 hours decision echo. Group starts 1 tier or warmer toward you, cedes your reputation locally, counts as a public aid. You suffer -5% personal damage dealt during echo, you chose to carry, not to cut. Choice 3, spend, give the breath your breath becomes theirs. Effects, 10 minutes. Allies in your afterwinds, haste +10%, damage reduction +15%, cleanse 1 minor debuff on entry. Immediate rally 1 downed ally at 15% HP if they're inside any afterwind. You, presence +1, attunement +1, but self-healing -20% during duration. Consequences, 24 hours decision echo. Exhausted, vitality -1, grit -1, rest removes early. Enslaved/formerly enslaved NPCs begin 2 tiers warmer, profit of the slave gains enhanced effect in this region, extra -1 DC on com/rally. Crow factions mark you priority target, their first attack each encounter gains +5% accuracy. Physical tell, a faint branching burn blooms under the clavicle in the pattern of your choice, single fork for keep, double for split, open fan for spend. The choices exploded in me but I intrinsically understood that I had little time. It was an impossible choice for an impossible circumstance. Each choice provided its own value but one stood out for my current situation. I was alone and uninformed. The choice was made of pragmatism alone. Keep, I told the chorus, and its systems flared brilliant colors I don't know the names of. When I return, I slung the cord and pack. I slid the gutter pipe into my palm and tested its swing. It moved the air a fraction slower than it should have. It was definitely not the same pipe. I looked once more at the clearing and the pod that had delivered me to this world. The fungus chests are already beginning to dull and wither. The system chimed in. Tasks, local. Later, I told it, and the jungle took the word in silence. I shouldered the pack. The straps bit my rough and scared skin. I took the map and pored over the fragment. It seemed to imply that I was deep into the wilderness. The top corner of the fragment and port at the point of a seeming peninsula was seemingly marked a town or port. The sky through the leaves shifted a shade toward afternoon. Somewhere not far a thing larger than a man went about its own business. As I moved in what I assumed was the direction of the port. Behind me, in the moss, the chests rotted into nothing, and the little white tooth in the forest that was my escape pod watched me go after nearly 2 centuries together.